Hi guys, welcome to this week's Reclassified here on Ickonic.com. This week I want to talk about the golden age of Saturn and what this golden age will actually be, but when we get into it, who will be allowed into this golden age and how they define who is one of these lost sparks they're trying to gather in. It's a really important subject to understand, and it's very, very convoluted, and I think this is where a lot of people get mixed up, and certainly I can't say that I understand it completely right now because it is so convoluted, even down to the point where people talk about the Jewish race when clearly it's not a race, it's a religion, it's a faith. The words and terminologies like Semitic they're being appropriated and misused, so they become meaning something. They become to mean something else that they don't actually mean. Semitic means a group of languages, largely Arabic, which would include the Palestinians, obviously, but appropriating that word is where it all gets confused in, and you could probably see elements of the Tower of Babel in that kind of understanding, that psychology. So I want to have a look at the golden age, but more sort of succinctly I want to look at the lost sparks of these sparks that fell at the start of the age of, according to these Orthodox Habadniks. Now I would like to say as well that these young people that are put into this Habad kind of mind control really are subjected to just hours and hours on end every day of this stuff, the stuff that they have to go through. So I'm not having a go at the actual young people and the people that have been indoctrinated into this stuff. It's very much cult-like, if not a cult outright. So it's the ones at the very top, the ones that are hanging around, the likes of Putin, Zelensky, Netanyahu, who's deeply involved in pushing their mission for a new Solomon's Temple and the world to come and the Greater Israel Project, all comes into this. Zionism as well. They're the ones that we need to watch out for. They're the guys at the top level that really know that this Habad understanding is something else. But the ones that are out on the streets every day, they've been as brainwashed and indoctrinated into this stuff as anyone else would be, and it's quite sad to see that how people are their lives are taking over this stuff. So it's not, again, it's not the people that are born into it, and many have escaped this and look back on it and to see actually what it is. So today I want to have a look at what constitutes these lost sparks and what this whole element of gathering these lost sparks in will mean, and how that relates to the golden age of basically Saturn. So we all know the golden age of Saturn was supposed to be a time of peace and prosperity for everybody, and everybody had what they wanted. It was a time of just great happiness. Obviously it's inverted. We can't take these things on face value. Everything gets inverted by this cult. So Trump here declares the golden age of America has already begun. So obviously they're using the code of the golden age. He said this before a few weeks prior. They are telling you they're trying to bring this messianic golden age about, this new world order, or as the Habad guys call it, their world to come. And that involves gathering in all the lost sparks and of the Israelites, the Jewish sparks. And this is really convoluted as to who they kind of claim to be part of this kind of Jewish lineage, the promise of this holy land to God, because obviously we know, as I said in the intro, that Judaism is a faith, it's not a race. But all of these terms get convoluted because in the end this cult at the very top want to kind of embed that there are two separate types of being here on the planet. And I think that most people that actually buy into this or born into this Habad, and there are other sects as well, and again, it's a very small subsect of the Jewish faith, they are just as confused as everybody else because it is very, very convoluted. The wording is kind of like, well, I know what that means, but it could mean something else. So we'll go through that and try and make some clarity in it anyway. So this is part of the golden age. So this is what we can expect. So the very first thing that they say is the restoration of the Bet Hamikdash, which would be Solomon's temple, the third temple. So the Mashiach shall restore the Bet Hamikdash in Jerusalem. This refers to the third Bet Hamikdash temple that will stand forever. How do you know something stands forever? I have no idea, because tomorrow's just another day. This is the whole thing about living forever. How do you know you're going to live forever? Because you're just alive. You don't know if you're going to be alive tomorrow. No one does. In fulfillment of the divine prophecy of Ezekiel, I shall give my sanctuary in their midst forever. My dwelling place shall be over them. The nations shall know that I am God, who sanctifies Israel. Israel again being the Israelites, or Jacob, change his name to Israel. When my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forever. So we're talking about the temple there, but the sanctuary is the temple. The actual New Jerusalem would be the cube that we've talked about in previous episodes that will come down, the golden cube or the white cube that will come down and perhaps merge in with the black cube of Nod or Saturn. Again, we're trying to figure out what these guys actually believe. And again, it's a very small subsect of the Jewish faith that believe this stuff. They all believe in the kind of end times and the prophecies, but the ways of going about it and what that actually means, there's so many different kind of convoluted versions of that. It's important to find out what this cult that's surrounding the politicians is what I'm interested in, what they believe. And this is certainly not all Jewish people, or those of the Jewish faith. So A was the temple coming down. So next, in gathering the exiles of Israel. Now this is what we're going to concentrate on this episode a little bit more, because this is where it kind of gets very convoluted as well. Through the Mashiach shall be effected the ingathering of all the exiles of Israel. Now this is to do with the sparks that fell at the time of creation, and we'll look into what that means in their ideology or their mythology. So Deuteronomy, God, your God, shall bring back your captivity, and he will return and gather you from all nations with a God. Your God has scattered you. If you're banished, shall be at the utmost end of the heavens. God, your God, shall gather you from there and shall take you from there. So this is basically about bringing all of the exiled tribes of Israel back to the Holy Land. And we know this is a basic principle of what they believe. But it actually goes even further than that. And it goes back into the creation story that these Lurianic Kabbalists, these Chabad guys, have. And even within Chabad, there's arguments over what this stuff means, remember. So it's not as cut and dry as we think it is. So the Zitzum, or the Titzum, so in the Zitzum narrative, I think that's how you pronounce it, I'm not 100% sure, which describes three general phases in the unfolding of the divine relationship with creation. So this is their Big Bang theory, kind of, really. The image of light plays a central role. Any reading of the relevant passages is bound to raise many difficulties because it's so convoluted. But before we start taking the concepts apart, it is important to get the different phrases of the narrative clear. So the different phases of the narrative, not phrases. Phase 1. So this is how, again, it's their kind of Big Bang theory. Before the Zitzum, there was a celestial and simple light that filled all existence, and there was no empty room. Rather, all was filled with simple, infinite light, which did not have either beginning or end, but all was one simple light, all the same and all equal. This is called infinite light. So this is basically everything. Everything, all of it, was just one big light. That was it. So then, to be able to create something, that light had to make space within the dimensions to create something. So it retracted itself. Phase 2. Then this light was contracted and drawn inside, leaving empty room, a hollow space, which is called shalal. After this, the Tzitzum, there was now space where emanations and creations could potentially be formed and made. So this light retracted itself in and made room for other things to be created. So this is the light. This is the light of everything. Phase 3. Then was drawn forth from the infinite light, which had made space, a single straight line, cav, drawn from the surrounding light, successively descending into the hollow. The top of this line is drawn from the infinite light itself and touches it, and through this line the infinite light is drawn and spread out below. Thus, in that hollow space, all the realms were emanated, created, and made. So it made space for itself. It retracted or contracted itself in, and made space, and started to create within that space that it made. And that was, it filled this space up with these elements of light. But what happens, because it contracted itself, in kind of an overview of what happened, it exploded. And all of these sparks started to fall to the earth. So rectifying the sparks. When the vessels of chaos shattered, 288 sparks fell from their level and became embedded in the lower levels of creation. So all these sparks have fallen. So you could see that, I suppose, matched up to the fallen angels. That could kind of correlate there in that story. As they fell downwards, they broke further into smaller particles. As they continued to fall, they became more numerous and coarser due to their egotistic origin. So the humans started to come in, their ego started to take over. The more refined sparks were assimilated to the Atzulit. The others fell into the Beriera and the Zetzura, constituting the evil or independent parts of those levels. So the fallen sparks is where the evil came from. Remember, it was all good, all God at the start. It contracted itself in and then exploded because it was too much, and these sparks started to fall to create this reality that we are in now. So the coarsest sparks fell into Asaya and ultimately created Klepot. Now this Klepot is a husk that engulfs this divine spark. It's a pot that holds around it and keeps that divine spark trapped within. Now this is where we get this kind of definition of those non-Jews, Gentiles and Jewish people, which is a faith, being separate from each other. And this is where it gets really convoluted and quite... And remember, this is the Chabad Lurianic learnings. This isn't all the Jewish faiths. This is Jewish mysticism. So I'd like to make that clear that not everyone who's Jewish believes these things. But these are the guys, and these are the sort of mindset and mentality that are around the likes of Donald Trump, Netanyahu, Zelensky, Putin, RFK Jr., Jared Kushner, Ben Shapiro, Tulsi Gabbard. This is what those guys believe. I'm not saying the politicians necessarily believe that, but they're certainly being influenced by these guys. So it's important to understand what they believe, not what we believe or what other Jewish Jewish sects and parts of the Jewish faith believe. I'm interested in what this cult surrounding these leading politicians believe. That's what I'm interested in, because that's where the influence is coming, and that's why you're seeing the outcomes of that being the Greater Israel Project, Zionism, and being what's happening in Gaza and the Middle East and Syria and the Solomon's Temple is all because of this belief system. So it's important that we understand that it's not all Jewish people, obviously, and it's not even a fraction of them. Well, it is a fraction of them, but it's not a large fraction of them. But it is. They are very prominent in the political spheres of the world. So the Tanya's view of non-Jewish people. Now, the Tanya is a book within their kind of more esoteric leanings. So within the Hasidic group of Chabad Lubavitch, the book which defines their worldview is Lukiyat Amaram, more commonly known by its first Hebrew word, Tanya. So it's Tanya. We'll call it Tanya from now on, because the other one is ridiculous to try and pronounce. This book offers details, unique explanations of the soul and how the soul connects to its source in God. Remember, go back to the sparks falling and getting captured in these pots. These sparks fell in, and they were surrounded by husks, which could be seen as the ego or the human. To the surprise of many readers, this book defines souls of Jewish people as different and better souls than non-Jewish people. So here we go. These ideas are rejected by all of modern Orthodoxy, Conservative Judaism and Reform Judaism. So remember, these are rejected by all of modern Orthodoxy, Conservative Judaism and Reform Judaism. They don't believe in this stuff, but the Chabad guys certainly do. For an example of a recent controversy about this See Hampstead Garden suburban synagogue has dropped a course on Tanya, the 18th century Lubavitch work, after congregants protested. So they were getting rid of this stuff. But this is the Kabbalah, Lurianic Kabbalah, and this is the beliefs of these Chabad guys at the core. So the Kabbalah further delineates two distinct types of Kelipa, which is Kelipot, same thing. Kelipa Noga, literally Kelipa, that can be illuminated. So these are the Kelipa Noga that can be saved. So remember that. So those who are not Jewish, but are trapped in a Kelipa, if they're trapped in the Kelipa Noha, they can be illuminated and saved. And Sholesh Kelipot Hatmoliot, which are three totally impure Kelipots. Kelipot Noga can be uplifted and refined, while the only form of reformation or redemption for the three impure Kelipot is their destruction. Now, this is where it gets really, really complicated. So, well, not really, really complicated, convoluted. So it appears to be there's two different types of Kelipot, but one of those types has three different types within it. So this is where it all gets really, really confusing. So these are husks around this spark. Now, you guys might understand this a little bit more than I do as we go through it. I'm not 100% sure if the spark within all of these Kelipot is at its core a Jewish spark and can be saved, but it's only by getting through the first three Kelipot that you get to the fourth, which is the Kelipot Noga, which contains some of the elements of this original spark. So are they freeing everybody? Is there a little Jewish soul in everybody, but some people are so kind of in the ego that they can't get to? And how do they kind of delineate that, and who does that count with? Like, it doesn't make total sense, but I don't think it's meant to. I think it's got to be so obscure that people can just make it up or just give you an answer depending on the circumstance and the person that you're working with. A lot of these Chabad guys, the young guys that you and girls that I do feel for, they go out on the streets, they get up in the morning at 7 o'clock, they have to do prayers, read the Talmud, and then read the Torah, then read the Tanya, and then come back for dinner, and then go out and on the streets on a Friday afternoon and kind of basically do missionary stuff and go out and talk to people in the streets and find out whether they're Jewish or not. I mean, what does that even mean? So the whole thing is slightly convoluted to the point where if you were brought up in that, you would be confused because it's confusing. So this is the other side. To release the holy spark, the encumbering shell of evil must be removed. So that's what I was saying just before. I'm not sure if the encumbering shell of evil is around every human being, and then within that human being they're trying to release the spark of the Jewish spark, which is the pure spark according to these guys, or it is just certain people. It's hard to tell. So, evil and impurity are often referred to in the Zohar as the other side, the Sitra Akra, which is the other side, which is the evil side and the good side. They have is dualism. Everything about this Kabbalah teachings, everything about the Chabad guys that they believe in is about dualism. They live in a world of duality. That's why you see the Freemasonic floorboards, and yes, the Jesuits and the Freemasons, the Knights Templar all believe very similar takes on these things. Evil is also referred to as Kelipa, meaning literally shell or bark. The Kelipa conceals within it a spark of holiness, so that implies that all do, which is the vital force by virtue of which the Kelipa exists. Analogous to a fruit surrounded by a shell or peel. In order to release the holy spark, the encumbering shell must be removed. The fourth level envelopes the spark of holiness, so that's the fourth level, which we're talking about. There's the Kelipa Noga. It's the one that actually has a salvageable spark within it. How they come to that conclusion on an individual basis is very vague and hard to understand. Well, I haven't understood it yet. Maybe you guys do. The Zohar distinguishes among four Kelipot, three of which are entirely evil. The fourth, Kelipat Noga, is the shell which actually envelopes the spark of holiness. It is thus has a direct contract with holiness and is not entirely evil. The other three Kelipot surrounded Kelipat Noga and are therefore further removed from holiness. So you've got, it's like a pass the parcel. Really, it's pass the parcel. So you've got three levels of this Kelipot round the edge that need to be discarded, And then you've got one that's closer to the spark called Kelipat Noga, which is the fourth level in, fourth level down, fourth skin down. And that can be salvaged because just beyond that is this holy spark. But it's not clear if this holy spark exists in everyone or just those who follow the Jewish faith. That's where it gets a bit murky for me in what I've managed to figure out so far. All matters pertaining to the prohibitions of the Torah, the forbidden objects, actions, utterance, thoughts, act, derive from the Sitra Akra, which is the bad side, from the three impure Kelipot. So the three impure Kelipots that are surrounding the fourth, the Kelipot Noha, or Noga, all the badness in the world comes from them three levels. And it is implied that those three levels of that are what you would say are non-Jews or Gentiles. But that's not actually what it says. Other people will come out and say that. But it does seem to be in the Tanya. It doesn't actually say that, but it does imply something along those lines. So it can be interpreted in that way. Absolutely. But is that what it was supposed to mean in the first place? It's very hard to tell. Those matters which are permeated by the Torah but do not pertain in a direct manner to the commandments of the Torah derive from the Kelipat Noga. So basically all the good comes from that, the Kelipat Noga, and all the bad comes from the three previous levels, three previous Kelipot husks. If that makes any sense, I hope it does. But some can be saved. Some that are not of the Jewish spark, or some that do have the three levels of the Kelipot or Klipot around the fourth level, they can be saved, but you're only saved by basically aiding the Jewish mission and sticking to the seven Nohai laws. So this is the righteous among nations. The righteous among nations is a title used by Yad Vashem to describe people who, for various reasons, made an effort to assist victims, including Jews, who were being exterminated by Nazi Germany during the Holocaust, which is, you'd hope we'd all do that, wouldn't we? The term originates from the concept of Ger Toshav, a legal term used to refer to non-Jewish observers of the seven laws of Noah. So here we go again. So we know that these Noahide laws, seven laws of Noah, are going to be the ones that the Gentiles have to abide by. And the top one of that is no idolatry, and obviously that would mean you would have to worship their God. So in a roundabout way, it's like read the small print. You would kind of have to end up doing what they wanted to do, and you would be allowed in as a kind of like a lesser person to serve this overall mission for their world to come and the gathering of the sparks. Now that could be interpreted that every spark in every human at their core is Jewish in terms of bringing about this prophecy, and they're trying to save everyone. It's a really convoluted way because we're programmed to think that Jewish is a race when it's a faith. But by blurring the edges, softening the wording, which is what the Tower of Babel did, people can't communicate properly. So when you say anti-Semitic, when Semitic means a group of languages, mostly Arabic, how can you be anti a group of languages, mostly Arabic? Anti and Semitic put together doesn't make a different word of Semitic. Semitic still means what it was, like antiperspirant. You're anti-perspiring. I've said that before. So it's the blurring of these terminologies that really get people mixed up, and has to be on purpose, and it's clever, but it does make it hard to understand. And I think it even makes it hard to understand for the people that are brought up in these very orthodox, like extreme ends of this faith, because that's why they end up reading these books for like hours on end. You just end up confused. It's a little bit like conspiracy theory land. You go so far down it that you end up quite confused by it all, coming out the other end with your hair all frazzled. Here's the next one. So, an explanation of the statement in Tanya, chapter 1, that the souls of Gentiles do not possess any good. Now, I don't know if it actually says this or not, but let's have a look at it. The following letter was addressed to a group of young men involved in the study of both Nigla and Chesiad in Fernandel, New York. New York is where all of this stuff happens, in Brooklyn, New York, pretty much. So greetings and blessings. In response to your letter, where you question the intent of the statement at the conclusion of chapter 1 in Tanya that the souls of the Gentile nations come from the three impure kelipos and they contain no good at all. So they're the three levels. That's where the Gentile souls are supposed to be. And it's the fourth level where it's almost near the divine spark, which is salvageable, but the three levels there aren't, and that's implying what these guys think it implies, that those three levels really represent the Gentiles. If that makes any sense. I hope it does. You raise doubts as to whether the Gentiles possess at least a certain measure of good, as evident from the fact that they are commanded to observe the 7 universal laws commanded to Noah and his descendants. So they say basically, yeah, they are. You do have good in you because you've followed our 7 Noahide laws. That's their that's their kind of requirement for you being a good person, is to serve the 7 Noahide laws. Moreover, there are pious Gentiles who have a portion in the world to come, a portion, according to a Rabbi Yehoshua, whose opinion is quoted by the Rahabam. Or is the intent that they do not possess any good at all, as stated in the Tanya? Now, that's not really what it says. So it goes on here to try and answer that question. Where we look at the issue from the standpoint of logic, support can be found for either position. And now this is what I'm saying, is that when we're looking into these things, it seems to be purposefully confusing. And there's your polarities. Your Shekinah, your Yahweh, your blue and your red, your polarities. It means a bit of both, or it means whatever it means, one of the other, depending on the circumstance. Therefore, you can't communicate this stuff. And the higher levels they go, I think it just becomes more clear of what they believe, of what these guys, bad guys that are around Zelensky, that are around Putin, that are around Netanyahu, Donald Trump, RFK Jr. These guys are the guys I'm interested in, not the guys that are going out on the street doing this, which are just young children who believe in this stuff, or just bloody confused as we are. At the top level, the clarity comes, the illumination comes, and so in terms of what they believe, not in terms of actual, real truth, their truth. When we look at the issue from the standpoint of logic, support could be found for either position. For example, if one were to postulate that they do possess a certain dimension of good, and it has an effect on them, what then would be the difference between the 3 impure kelipos and kelipos noga? Also, what is the intent of the statement, all charity performed by Gentiles is only to enhance their pride? The question applies particularly in the light of the Saharadin 97b, which interprets the word Bisiel as his household, as implying that the descendants of Noach are also obligated to give charity. Why then are the descendants of Noach considered as totally impure and evil without any good at all? And let's go back to what we said last week, just quickly, the week before. We are the descendants, the Gentiles, of Cain and that line, which is Adam and Lilith, or Samael and Lilith sometimes, but the descendants of Cain, the baddie line. They are the descendants of Adam and Eve, and it goes down through Isaac, Jacob, David, Solomon, and all this side. So they're implying there are 2 types of people when this is a faith. So it all keeps coming back to some convoluted way of trying to sort of get people to think that there are 2 types of people on this planet. Literally 2 races. And I'm not talking about, there are races of people, obviously, white, African, American, Asian. But we're the human race. We are all the human race in subsects. Now, this is trying to imply that maybe there are actually 2 different sparks of divinity, because again, it's duality. It's a program or an ideology of duality, a dual. B, if one would postulate that they do not contain any good at all, how do they continue to exist? Moreover, even if the charity they perform is only for the sake of enhancing their own pride, the deed they have performed is good, although their intent is undesirable. Thus, how is it possible for them to perform a good deed if they do not contain any good at all? So this is how confusing it gets for the people that are trying to understand this. The concept has, however, already been explained in Shahistudus in the following manner. They are from the 3 impure kelipos and contain no good at all. The intent is that their essence, there is no good. Nevertheless, through the mode of exile, is enclosed within them divine life energy, a spark from the 10 seraphots, and Asaya, in whose core as the Seraphot of Yetzirah, in whose core are. That appears to imply that at the root of all of us, including the Gentiles, there is a little Jewish spark of divinity. But the three outward kelipot husks are what really the Gentiles are. We're covering up their goodness. We're the evil that's kind of contained the goodness. Again, this is only an extreme understanding of mystic Judaism. This is not by any means anywhere near what most people of the Jewish faith believe. This is the extreme end of these Chabad guys. It just seems like, from what I can tell here, is that the Gentile part is the husk, the three levels of the husk covering the fourth level and the spark of divineness that fell during the kind of initial contraction of the white light and the explosion afterwards. That's what I'm kind of gathering from this. You make up your own mind whether this makes any sense. But the whole kind of concept is that there is two types of people. One covering the spark and the spark itself. And we may not be the spark. Or connected to the spark. Anyway, well, I'm not saying we're not, because I think it's all bollocks anyway. But you know what I mean. I'm trying to get into the mind of what these guys believe and what they may be passing on and putting in the minds of these top level politicians who are gophers anyway for this whole messianic nonsense. So this one is really important to understand. So again, please remember that the confusion probably lies within these young Chabad kids as well. That this is totally confusing and possibly purposely so. The claim that the Chassidic classic, the Tanya, is a racist work is outstanding. Well, it can't be a racist work because the faith it's a faith, it's not race. Its accusers are obviously unfamiliar with the vocabulary of Jewish philosophy and mysticism which underlines its texts. Let us review the relevant passage. The passage speaks of idol worshippers devolved of a revealed religion. Elsewhere, the author of the Tanya makes it quite clear that the pious of the nations, Gentiles who follow the moral dictates of the Noahide laws, or the Noahide laws. So again, if you are following the Noahide laws, then you are a pious one. Again, you would have to be worshipping their God, because idolatry would would mean you not worshipping Yahweh or El, their God. So, you know, it makes no difference, really. It's always just like convoluted ways of coming to the same conclusion. And they are excluded from the definition of idol worshippers if you go by the 7 Noahide laws. The critics' confusion is rooted in their ignorance of the Kabbalistic term impure shells. In their view, this seems to imply that those idolaters are rooted in some demonic or satanic source distinct from divinity. In Judaism, of course, there's no such thing as something devoid of divinity. Had they intended a class in Tanya, they would have discovered that the realm of impurity too is infused and sustained by the divine emanations, the holy Sephirot, without which nothing could exist. The impure shells too are divine creations for those purposes they serve. So we serve a purpose for this whole messianic agenda. So we have a divine mission, but we are kind of just like worker bees to be involved with this. That's what it kind of implies to me, is that we have a purpose. But it's not for our own good. And the difference between pure and impure is simply how humans relate to them. So if you abide by these Noahide laws, then you might have a spark in you or be closer to the spark. It's, again, convoluted. So these are the 7 Noahide laws. Do not worship idols, which would mean do not worship anyone that's not Yahweh. Do not curse God. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery or sexual immorality. Do not steal. So do not commit adultery or sexual immorality. Do not steal. Do not eat flesh torn from a living animal. And establish courts of justice. Again, interpretations of them are down to these people. So it's worth looking into. This was really interesting. Now it even gets even more complicated for these guys, because not only do the sparks hide within 4 levels of Kelipot, every Jewish person is supposed to have 2 souls. Again, remember, this is Jewish mysticism. This is about dualism. Everything has to have an opposite and equal. Every single Jew, whether they are good or wicked, possesses two souls. One of these souls originates in the Kelepa and Sitra Achra. Let's define this. So, one of these souls originates in the Kelepa and Sitra Achra, which is the bad side. So, they basically see this as a devil on your shoulder and angel on your shoulder, black and white. But this is how confusing it must get for these guys, because not only are these guys separate under all these husks, but there might be a little bit of good in them. You, as a person who is of the Jewish faith, actually has two souls as well, according to this Jewish mysticism. No wonder they bloody spend ages trying to get their head around this. Kelepa. The word kelepa in Hebrew means a shell or peel. In Kabbalah, this term is used to describe evil generally. So then people have also said that kelepa also describes the Gentiles, but that's not really what it says. In essence, God created certain forces which hide or conceal the godly life force which is found in all creation. Similar to a peel covering a fruit, we will learn more about Kelepa later. In the Sitra Achra, this phrase literally means the other side. This term generally refers to the side that is the opposite of the holiness or godliness. Kelepa and Sitra Achra are generally synonymous. So that is basically... So let's get our head around that. So the Jewish soul in itself has two parts to it, a good and bad side, because everything has to have a duality. And obviously then, if they have to be the good side as a whole, with two parts within them, there has to be an evil side. So that would imply, just by the definition of good and evil, that the Gentiles would be the evil side. But it doesn't specifically say that. It says within them there is a, spark that can be brought out. But that seems to only be able to be brought out if you abide by the Noahide laws, which would help the Greater Israel Project, which would help the Messianic agenda and the Solomon's Temple and the cube of the New Jerusalem Zion coming down. So it seems to be, well, you might have a spark in you as long as you help us do this thing. It's just absurd how useful you are to this Messianic agenda. So this is when I put together the Jewish dual soul, the lineage of Adam and Eve. So on the evil side, there's the devil. Obviously, it's just the Jewish soul, the split soul, the evil inclination, the animal soul, and Esau. So we've seen Jacob and Esau. Esau would be the kind of evil brother of Jacob, and Jacob stole his birthright. So that's sustained by material urges. So it's the ego, it's everything you want in this world. Devil, evil inclination, animal soul, and Esau is all bad. The bad side of the soul. So the good side of the Jewish soul, apparently, is the angel. It's good inclination. It's good things that they do. The divine soul, and it's Jacob. Jacob and Esau were brothers. Jacob became Israel later on and changed his name. Sustained by the yoke of the Torah and mitzvah. So basically doing all of their kind of mitzvahs and their 365 things they have to do. That's how it's sustained. But there's clearly like a cult mentality to this. I don't think that's denied or deniable even. It's clearly a cult feel to this stuff. And they have a fear of the Almighty. So it's a good thing that they fear Yahweh. And we don't fear Yahweh because we don't believe in Yahweh. But they're good. But this is the soul of the Jewish person. So that person inside them, they have this. They're going to start questioning these convoluted belief systems. And then so what they do, these... like any cult, they say, well, that's the bad side of you coming through. That's the devil getting in you. That's the evil inclination inside you. So you can see how it's done. So these poor people that are brought up in this stuff, you've got to feel for them, because it's like, even when they kind of have a heartfelt, this doesn't make sense, that's put down to the evil inclination and the devil kind of getting into you, So like any cult, any like real stern belief system, it's a mind fuck. As it says at the bottom there, at the time of prayer, each soul dual, as with Jacob and Esau. So within each person of the Chabad, Lubavitch, Hasidic, Orthodox faith, and again, it's just these Chabad guys seem to believe this stuff. It could be things that come from other parts of Judaism, but I'm more concentrating on what these guys believe. There, within that soul, there's the Jacob and Esau, the devil and the angel fighting against each other during the prayer, and it's the duel. The prayer is the duel between those two sides of that person. I mean, you got to feel sorry for these guys, because to be brought up around this, it must be horrific. So the Sitra Achra, classic Jewish philosophy, explains that although God is good and it has its nature in to do good, he created the world with evil to give his creations an arena of free choice to choose good over evil. So then you come back to this, knowledge of good and evil at the tree. This is necessary to enable his creations to earn the greatest possible goodness that God can bestow upon them, which is himself. Hasidism emphasizes that the ultimate purpose of creation is to create a dwelling for God in this world by refining and elevating the body and its portion in the world. So you're trying to create a place for God in this world, a physical place, by refining this place so it becomes habitable for their God. The presence of evil poses the greatest challenge in this quest, but the greater the darkness and stronger the force of evil, the brighter is the transformation of darkness into brilliance. And then this is where you get this whole belief system of do what thou will. Love is the law, love is all of the law, is that everything is love and everything is good, and even evil leads to good eventually, and the more evil you do, the more good will come out of it. That's absurd. They're two different energies, as we said before. Left and right are two opposite ways of going. So the blue and the red of this alchemical principle are opposites. One's a negative and one's a positive. They're not the same thing, and one leads to a negative conclusion, one leads to a positive conclusion. They don't lead to each other. But that's what they're trying to convince people, that you can do negative things and that can have a positive outcome, and that's where all of this like satanic madness comes from. The presence of evil poses the greatest challenge in this quest, but the greater the darkness and the stronger the evil force, the brighter the transformation of the darkness into brilliance, darkness to light. You see that put everywhere over the New Age order. Kabbalah uses the term Kelipar to describe evil and divides everything in this world into either the Sitra di Kedusha or the Sitra Achra, meaning the side of holiness or the side of impurity. Kelipat Noka can be uplifted, as we said again, up to the fourth level of this husk, while Shilos Kelipat Hatmayot are totally impure Kelipot. The Tanya explains that anything that is not directed towards God, which is Yahweh, and his will, so the 7 Noahide laws, and service is considered Sitra Achra, or the other side, and does not receive its vitality from the holiness of God. The world of Kelipot and the Sitra Achra is considered severe and evil, and wicked men prevail. So they're just deciding, if you don't stick by these 7 Noahide laws, that you're from the evil side. So it's not who you are, and it's not a race thing, it's a behavioural, Pavlovian behavioural concept. It's a cult. So the Kelipat Noha, let's just go over this bit just quickly again. So the dimension of Kelipa in which the light is intermingled with the shell. So this is shimmering darkness. So this is the one that's just basically just over this shimmering light, this divine spark that can be turned into good. Differs from the other Kelipot in that its spiritual potential, the brightness within it, can be redeemed by man's constructive intent while making use of the physicality in which it is vested. So this is the spark within you, and it could be within a Gentile by the looks of it. But really, it's only released if you're abiding by the Noahide laws. So basically working towards their messianic agenda. Now we know that, and I know that's a lot to take in and to trying to get your head around, but hopefully some of that made sense. This was really interesting. We know that in New York, Brooklyn is where these Chabad guys reside, coming over from Russia, I believe, after World War II, and they've branched out from there, but that's their main headquarters. If we've seen those people coming out from the sewers with the mattresses and stuff like that, they're the young Chabad guys. Apparently they were in there, this is what I've been told by Stuart Swerdlow, trying to find some mystical books from their Rabbi Schneerson to prove that he was still alive, or that he was coming back. That's what he says, but they dug a massive hole there. That weren't done 5 minutes. So you make of that what you will. I'm not sure what to believe there. But looking over New York, obviously, is the Statue of Liberty. Now, the Statue of Liberty is many things, but it is a representation of Semiramis, which is also Isis, You can see there's clearly a bit of Sol Invictus there in the hat and the head. But what was really interesting, I didn't know till recently, that it represents Shekinah, which is their kind of it's the female aspect of Yahweh, which we've been through, and that's the one that protects them in exile. So that statue has been put there. But what was really, really fascinating to me was that it wasn't originally this teal, Peter Teal, green. It was gold or copper. Now they know, remember, these are all alchemical principles. So they know that putting a copper statue in air and oxidizing it would eventually turn this teal colour. So it is my belief that over time they knew that Shekinah would reveal her true self and protect this Chabad group in New York. Now I say that because, one, it makes sense, and these are alchemical hermetic principles. So remember, they would have known this over time, that would have oxidized and turned that colour, and that's the colour on Epstein's roofs, on the roofs of this Scientology building, the Church of Spiritual Technology. This is the protective colour. It's a blue kind of teal green colour of Shekinah. They would have known that gold, copper would have turned into that. And what's really interesting is it's this blue teal colour that protects the gold of the Ark of the Covenant when it's moved. So it's a reversal. It's an inversion. And what's even more apparent is that the flame is kept gold. Why have they purposely kept the flame gold? The flame represents the spark within every being that is this spark of Judaism, spark of Israel. That's what that flame represents. It's that spark within the husks, and they're trying to release these sparks. So I think these young people, bless them, believe that they're actually doing the world good, and most cults do believe they're doing the world good. They're releasing these divine sparks trapped inside the husk of us. Get them out, and that's, I believe, exactly what they've been brainwashed to think, that there is good in everybody, but you've got to kind of follow these rules and bring about that messianic agenda to release those sparks back in to this original white light that contracted itself. So that's why that is still gold, because that represents that spark to be released that's hidden within. It's the eternal flame. So this is really interesting when it comes to the eternal flame. Now, it's my view now, it could change in the future, that Lady Diana and Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, were both used as part of this messianic agenda in different ways. And when they were taken out, killed, clearly JFK was shot in the head, and Lady Diana drove into the 13th pillar in a tunnel built on ground that was once ground that they used to do a kind of ritual to Goddess Diana, which is Semiramis, which is Isis, which is Shekinah, all the same thing, Virgin Mary. The flames they put there were the golden flames to represent the spark that was released from the being that was John F. Kennedy and Lady Diana. It's almost like they're saying, and we released your sparks, you are free now, and thank you for helping us. And Lady Diana was being used to bring about this Antichrist nonsense, what we spoke about a few weeks ago with the Moonchild, Crowley's Moonchild. She's used all her life. But this is a way of saying your sparks are now released, and maybe it's a way of them kind of, I don't know, explaining away to themselves that there was reasons why they had to go. It's an interesting one, very interesting. So this is about the shattering of the vessels that we spoke about earlier when they fell to earth, like the fallen angels, the sparks fell to earth. It should be noted that the shattering of the vessels was not an accidental flaw in the divine plan. On the contrary, this process allowed for the creation of evil, providing man with the exercise of free choice, and the challenge to create something I blatantly can't pronounce, Dira bi taktonim. Furthermore, hidden subliminally within the Kelipar are the original lights of the world of chaos. When a person transforms Kelipat Noga or even the three impure Kelipot through destruction, he releases those lights. So let's go back to that. The eternal flame released of Diana, of John F. Kennedy. Shekinah holding the eternal flame there. Let's just read that again. When a person transforms Kelepat Noha, or even the three impure Kelepot, through destruction, death, he releases those lights. The liberty flame. The liberty coin. In every material item, there are sparks of holiness that are released when that item is used for the sake of heaven, for the sake of heaven. Again, these Noahide laws, this messianic agenda. It could be that certain sparks wait hundreds or even thousands of years for someone to release them. They believe they're releasing us from our shells back into divinity. They're doing us a favour. It's just insane. And they have this. In most cults have the same thing. You're doing the world a favour. You're saving the world. It's no different from any other cult mentality. That you're doing good by doing bad. It's insane. Of course it is. It's not how it works. They're two opposite energies. But they've been convinced from a very early age, these guys, that these Chabad guys, ultra-Zionists, and the politicians that they're surrounding have been convinced that they are, by destroying us, releasing our sparks. When you're killing people, you are killing people. It's not for you to do. That's killing people. You cannot say you're releasing their soul from their from their vessel. I know some other people believe that we're this soul stuck in a vessel, but that's down to the individual to decide whether they want to be released from it or not some guys in black hats. The Kelepa. So this is the husk and the peel. Just to go over what I've tried to explain in this one. I'm not sure if I've done a good job of it or not. The lineage of Cain would be us, those who are not of the Jewish faith. Eve from the evil world, the Sitra Akra, with the Shalos Kelepot Hetmayot, which are the three shells that must be destroyed or discarded. And the Kelepat Noha, which is the one that can be saved. Now they get to decide which level of shell you're at, depending on how much you abide by the Noahide laws. I hope this is making sense. On the other side, the two worlds, is the lineage of Seth, which was the son they had after Cain killed Abel. They had another son called Seth, and that goes down to Jacob, Isaac, David, Solomon, and all these guys. They're the good world. They're the Sitra de Kadusha, and they're the Jewish dual souls we spoke about earlier. Every Jewish person is supposed to have a dual soul, a light and dark side, because everything's about duality. And this is Chabad Kabbalah. Again, this is not most Jewish people believe this. Elements might be similar, but the overall thing is this is Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, Lurianic Kabbalah, and the Chabad guys. And it's just really sad to see that this is really what they are going on about. So we come back to Trump at the start talking about the golden age, where all of these divine sparks are freed in the golden age, and that's where they see it. They see it saving the world and freeing the sparks. Trump's crypto project is buying niche tokens worth millions of dollars. Remember what his crypto project is called? The World Liberty Financial Ether. So, and the ether obviously is the fifth element. So his crypto kind of world is all based around this nonsense of this liberty and liberation, which really means just liberating the light that's trapped within all the Gentiles. And it's just insane. So why is Saturn's reign called the Golden Age? Saturn's Golden Age is primarily called so because everyone lived in peace and happiness, enjoying an abundance of resources. Unlike other ages, there was no coercion or conflict during this time. That's exactly how you got there. This state of harmony and contentment is what defines the essence of the Golden Age. So the new Golden Age will be created by coercion and conflict, and then there'll be none. It's absurd. You get out what you put in. Now, they call this the world to come, not the New World Order. So let's have a quick look at what that is before we go. There are two general possibilities. One is that it refers to a heavenly abode where the souls of the righteous live on after death, the sparks. The other is that it's the perfected world that will follow the coming of the Messiah, when the dead are resurrected and complete peace prevails. This is the New World Order. This is the Golden Age or the world to come. It's the same thing. It could be up there or it could be down here on Earth, depending on what they believe. There are no explicit references to the world to come in the Torah. though some commentators saw hints to it in the text. Rabbi Chaim Ibn Atta, an 18th century Moroccan Kabbalist, suggests that the Torah begins with the Hebrew letter Bet, which corresponds to the number 2, to hint that God actually created two worlds in Genesis, the physical world and the world to come. And several statements in the Bible imply that there is some continuation of life that follows death in this world, including this verse from Genesis 15:15 about Abraham. As for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a ripe old age. Since Abraham was not buried with his fathers, some understand this verse to be referring to the afterlife. So they just interpret this stuff however they want. But it should be funny. It's not, because thousands of people are dying all around the world because of this messianic nonsense. And that's why it's important to understand what these guys believe. Again, this is a very small sect of those of the Jewish faith that believe this stuff in this extreme way. So, these are all the guys, I use this image a lot, that are surrounded by the guys that believe this stuff. Netanyahu, deeply involved, says to Schneerson there that he is working on bringing about this mission. Donald Trump there being looked at rather suspiciously by a bad rabbi. RFK Jr. with the lunatic Shmuley. And you've got Millet there, Putin with his rabbi who's been brought up and raised around these guys. These are the top level guys. One with Zelensky as well, which could be the same guy that's sitting there with Trump. It's hard to tell. These are the top level guys. These aren't the guys that I'm talking about on the streets that are young and impressionable and learning this stuff and having to study these books and go out and do all these things. They're victims of this too. But these top level guys know full well that they are using this madness to influence these top level world leaders, who aren't really leaders at all, to bring about this messianic agenda and this new age to come. So I hope that made sense. It's really hard to convey this stuff, and I think it's purposely convoluted and confusing, and as you go up the levels they kind of make it less confusing for you, or appear so. It's kind of like problem, reaction, solution. They'll make it so confusing and then kind of clear it up themselves towards the top. But these guys are definitely involved with these high-level politicians that are making decisions on a world stage, or appear to be. At least they're the front guys for it, and they're bringing about this messianic age in the Middle East, and this is exactly what we're seeing the world over, and they're connected to every single one of these. So this is why it's important to know this stuff. They believe that they are freeing the sparks, whichever form they say that spark is, hidden between either the Gentile husk or the Kelipot or Klepot. And they believe they're doing the world a favour and bringing about this perfect new age of Saturn. Guys, remember to do your own research, come to your own conclusions, and I'll see you in a week's time here on Ickonic.com. I've got another part of the interview with Seven Seas coming up now. Great researcher will be joining us here at Ickonic pretty soon by the looks of it. Remember to leave your own comments, and hopefully that made some sense to you, because this is a journey we're on together, trying to clarify what this madness means to them. Not to us. We don't have to believe in a word of it. I certainly don't. But I believe they believe it. And I believe that's something to worry about. Take care. Goodbye. So guys, welcome back to this week's Classified here with 7C. So last week you watched us go all the way through the esoteric stuff from number 42 and all the way up to Babylon. And now we're at Rome. Now this is fascinating stuff. I mean, it's, again, lovely to chat to someone who's got so many different takes on what's going on. And I'm learning loads of new stuff to add to my own information here. So we're at Rome now. We've gone from the Silk Road. I agree with you about what you said about the Silk Road, especially with these guys like the Lee family and the Bacharachs, who were the Bowers and the Rothschilds. That's how they became who they are, controlling both ends of the Silk Road. If you look at it in Hermetic principles, you have your left and your right paradigm, or your blue and your red paradigm, and then you have your triangulation at the very top, becomes the pyramid with the all-seeing eye at the very top. So where are we in Rome now? How did we get from Babylon to Rome?
So I always think that it's interesting when I bring this up because my whole start looking into Rome was had nothing to do with like Mesopotamian religions or the Saturn cult or anything like that. Monotheism wasn't even on the agenda. I wanted to know, okay, well, if every people, the original peoples, all started with a foundation of polytheism, what happened? Where'd it go? Why is it gone? And I figure I would start with Rome because that's always like the most prominent. You know, you have the Greek pantheon, you have the Roman pantheon, and all their gods. And it just seemed like one day, randomly in the third century or the fourth century, whatever it was, that it just completely disappeared. And to me, seeing like thousands of years of culture, all of their like their architecture and things like that crumble, fall away when they had been so well preserved over Rome's lengthy history, powerful rule, to see it all just sort of fall to pieces kind of gives me a lot of worry about today, especially looking at like the UK and America. We're not too big to fail. That's a made up thing. That's not real. That's a product of their lexicon. That's not something that actually exists. Um, but when I was looking into Rome, I noticed that it seemed that the starkest contrast happened with Roman Emperor Constantine, or Constantine the Great, as people call him. And I actually started to do some digging into him. And obviously, like, he was in power during the Council of Nicaea, and when like Roman Catholicism became the most prominent religion. I know you and I both just kind of see all of it as like an allusion to the Saturn and things like that in a roundabout way, indirectly, as they like to do, with like we covered in the last episode. That's not always they're gonna tell you it's gonna be going through like five different games of telephone and hiding layers, just like with money. um and you start to look at like the people that were connected to Constantine, like Eusebius of Caesarea. There's about five or six Eusebiuses in here. It was so hard to keep track of them all. I had to keep constantly double checking myself to make sure that I wasn't talking about the same guy who was just from two different places according to two different people. Um, Theology gets a little messy for me. I'm going to be honest. I'm not religious. I grew up in like a semi-religious household. I never really got like super far with the Bible. So if anything, I'd say that I'm going in this with a healthy level of skepticism, but relatively just green to everything. So I'm taking everything that I'm reading at face value and like just seeing the historical connections. One of the main challenges, especially with challenging religion, is you almost have to become like a theologian in and of yourself in order to debate with these guys, because they'll have extensive knowledge about stuff that you can only get out of religious texts or through like word of mouth, things like that, old scrolls in some library somewhere in Rome. And I started to just sort of build out from him. And we have like Eusebius of Emesa, which I still have to do some digging on. uh you get Athanasius and Alexander of Alexandria, which was the pope behind like the date of Easter, and things like that, which you can see right here. He was the leader of the opposition to Arianism, um, and he mentored Anthius of Alexandria. So Anthius right here, or Athanius, sorry, uh, was like one of his direct pupils. You have Arius, who came up with the entire concept of Arianism, the Arian controversy. You have Paul here, who's a pupil of the Lucian of Antioch. Uh, and that opens up a whole new thing right here. Uh, Lucian of Antioch is considered to have a major influence on Arius and the founder of Arianism. And Lucian,
So,
I mean, is
so Arianism, sorry to jump in there, just to make sure that I've got
yeah,
this right, because that's new to me. Is that the Aryan principle of the blonde hair, blue eye thing? Is this what we're talking about here? Or am I just getting it completely mixed up?
it is not. I actually made the same mistake. It is so it's Arianism with an I
Right.
instead, and it's like a some sort of splinter of Roman Catholicism. This is where I'm sort of having a hard time keeping track of who believed what specifically, because you start to this is those minute details and things. But there were three or four different thoughts of or schools of thought while the Council of Nicaea was happening. Arianism, I believe, was the one that uh, assumed that Jesus was God. He wasn't a prophet. He wasn't a man. He wasn't of the flesh. He was God. You had people that opposed it who said that no, he's the Son of God and push like the Holy Trinity, and that he's like a separate entity. He was God in the flesh. He was like a human who, descended from God, and it's like this infighting that they sort of did to establish what would become the Nicene Creed. Where you get like the libertarians splinter off from the right, you have liberals that are progressives that split off from the left. This is sort of like that, but mainly just about like the Nicene Creed and the role of Jesus in Christianity. Uh, but they like got into it with Alexander of Alexandria with like the whole Easter thing because he had believed that the birth of or the crucifixion of Jesus was him actually passing over and dying, where they believe that Easter shouldn't have been a thing because he didn't actually die because he is God. And just like small differences like that. But that's Arianism with an I. The Y one is where you start to get like the white supremacy ties or whatever they like.
Yeah.
Um, and you have like Eusebius of Emesa, Acacius of Caesarea, Eusebius of Nicomedia, and I have things with where like together with Pamphilus, Eusebius was a scholar of the biblical canon and is regarded as one of the most learned Christians during late antiquity. His work, Onomasticon, is an early geographical lexicon of the places in the Holy Land mentioned in the Bible. He's considered the father of church history. So not like father of the church necessarily, but
Mm.
all of the lore and all of the stories and things that were pulled. A lot of them were done by Eusebius and this group because these were the appointees from the 12 tribes of Israel that ended up translating the Bible from Hebrew to Greek. And they controlled it basically whatever they wanted to pick, choose, change, manipulate from Hebrew and the Dead Sea Scrolls into Greek to now become what is modern day Roman Catholicism was done through this council, through those 12 tribes of Israel, given to Constantine the Great to make the official religion of Rome, Roman Catholicism.
It's insane, isn't it? It's just,
Yeah.
well, I mean, you're talking about thousands of years, so a lot's going to happen, but it is
Yeah.
like, just for people to take it literally now. I mean, even looking at it, it's quite clear there's definitely a major element of it is astrotheology as well. So you just kind of like, this is, this is changes upon twists of original text anyway. So this, you're
Yeah.
looking about interpretations of interpretations of interpretations of edits of interpretations of nuances and people's biases of edits through the years, and people take it literally, and that's what the Solomon's Temple whole thing
Mm-hmm.
is taking something literal that could have been astrotheology and just mapping the time of the year, and now we're looking at all thousands of years later that a cult really it is a cult. There's no difference between this than a cult. You can't separate the two. It is a cult, and that's what worries me when people look, and I put that image of the Chabad guys and all the politicians up a lot because Zelensky and Putin are both in with the Chabad guys. So
Mm-hmm.
is Netanyahu. So is Trump. really in with them. So is RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Malay, are they all are. And these guys have a, from what you're saying there, the complex nature of what you're saying, the changes and the personal twist there, they're taking a literal version of what we've ended up with and going, oh
Mhm.
well, that's definitely going to come to pass. We'll just make it happen. It's just
Yeah.
fucking insane. And that sounds funny, but it's not funny when 44,000 children are dying in the Middle East because of this fucking nonsense, quite frankly. And this is a madhouse.
Yeah, I would even argue to say like when we go back to the whole East versus West thing, a lot of people seem to forget that we're actively like on the verge of war with China through Taiwan. Like, we have Russia and Israel and Palestine and or we have Russia, Ukraine, Israel, and Palestine, but people forget like the largest part of the East that we're not talking about is also fighting us. Like it is literally you could draw a line right down, split it, and it's the UK, the US, most of Europe versus China, Russia, and so on and so forth. And it's crazy because even if you look at the side, like if you look at the Palestinians, obviously they're sided with the East because of the Islam push and the push of Islam to the East, where Israel is, more on the West and covered with like Christianity just being Judeo-Christian so heavily involved. I think that they're picking the West and using that to just keep the cycle going, the same cycle that they've been pushing for thousands of years. Um, and that was all covered in that like little graphic that I was sort of showing you with the Silk Road and separating Christianity and Islam, pushing them in different directions on purpose. Because when you start to look at like where these people came from, like where is Caesarea? Well, Caesarea is actually uh the site was first settled in 4th century BCE as a Phoenician colony trading village known as Stratton's Tower after the ruler of Sidon. Uh, and then that goes into like the king of Sidon. You get who is it? Dagon the fish
Yeah, the
deity
Dagon
with the
fish
Pope
god.
hat.
Pope hat, yeah, which is he's a Dagon, and it's supposed to be it's a couple of names. See, that's where it gets
I
confusing.
got you.
Dagon is the kind of tribe, I believe, which could be dragon as well.
Mm-hmm.
But also there's another name for it as well.
Hadad.
Might be that one. I'll have to have a think. But yeah, there's several names for the same deity, but yeah, it's the fish hat basically.
This one.
This one. Yeah, this one. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
it. Yeah, it's the mitre.
And they say that Dagon was a direct god of the Philistines. Well, if I remember correctly, Philistines is a book in the Bible.
Mm,
They're literally pulling directly from these people that worship this fish god who, it's said that in this same Mesopotamian religion gave birth to Baal.
yep.
It says that Baal is, considered the son of Hadad. Sometimes they're like conflated together with each other. Um, but it even says like but inscriptions have shown that the name Baal was particularly associated with storm and fertility god Hadad and his local manifestations. Hadad is another name that they gave to like El, Saturn, things like that. So it's like you have Dagon, Hadad, Saturn, because Hadad has all of the bull imagery as well.
Yep.
um, I was looking here, like the bull was the symbolic animal of Hadad. He appeared bearded, often holding a club and thunderbolt, and wearing a bullhorn headdress. Um, so it's like it all ends up coming back from the same place, and this is what that like this is all the religion of where Eusebius came from. Like he was from this town, Caesarea, that was a Phoenician colony. They even had King Herod the Great go there and dedicate the port itself to Caesar Augustus. And you can see like in the New Testament era, Herod the Great visited Sidon. So like King of the Jews went and visited this place where they worshiped a fish god.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden you have the Pisces and the fish and or the Aquarius and the fish and Jesus and all of his fish imagery. And that just goes back into, Sidon being the son of Canaan in the book of Genesis, and how I believe is a carrying on of the traditions that just goes all the way back up to Noah.
Again, I mean, so the other names for Dagon. So Dagon was a tribe, I believe. So Nimrod is one name they tried to tie it to, and
Mm-hmm.
Onassis was Oannes. Sorry, Onassis was JFK's wife. Oannes, probably a link there as well. Oannes was the fish god. So this whole fish god thing is really important to them. But yeah, it's clearly there in the Catholic Church, and obviously that would be. And if you look at astrotheology, you've got Pisces as well, and the water picture obviously would be possibly where like, another guy that I speak to as well said that that was an analogy for that's why they used the flood motif of when the water was tipped out of the picture.
Mm,
So you can have that astrotheology signs, and basically that's where they've mapped the seasons as well. So there's that level, which I tend to kind of believe that it was a way a survival guide originally. It wasn't written like that, and then they wrote them
right.
into stories, and the stories have changed through the years, and they've actually put them in personified the actual stories, and they've put them into actual like literal stories, and people have taken them literally now. And I think at some level these black nobility guys know that this is astrotheology. I believe that it probably is astrotheology, but got completely messed up. But I also think it's hermetic principles in terms of how the nature of reality works. In terms of I was talking earlier about the red shift, blue shift. They know how to
Mm-hmm.
manipulate this world and manipulate people by, as you say, splintering off Islam as the red and the blue would be Christianity. They understand triangulation because they understand a lot of the things that came with the earlier kind of principles of Hermeticism. So that's why the Freemasons do this stuff with the Kabbalah because they understand how this reality works and how they can manipulate it to manipulate people. That's why they used colors. So the MSNB logo, I'll put this out today. MSNBC logo, if you look at it, is the inversion of the light spectrum. So when you look at the lights go, the colors going from the middle outwards, they've turned
Yep.
it the other way around. So it's the inversion of what you see, and they've twisted it through the looking glass, they've reversed it and inverted it, and now you're looking inwards and you're basically seeing the world they want you to see. So they understand there's levels to this. That's what I think I'm trying to say. Is
Yeah.
there's hermetic levels, there's story levels, there's actual principles of manipulating people. But so we're there in Rome now, and they've created this basically what was a pagan faith, a pantheon, whittled
Mm-hmm.
down into one religion, but could have been come from them belief originally. Original beliefs could have come from astrotheology and a bit of hermeticism in there in terms of the nature of reality, and they've put stories to them. But they've got all of these stories down into one now. Is that why kind of the conclusion you come to is that that is a basically they've just edited out things that didn't fit in the narrative, but it was basically what they were doing in Babylon, but rebranded.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that they saw a lot of pushback with what I would consider some of the early like Mesopotamian beliefs and practices. I'm largely convinced that that's why they were exiled from Egypt. Was the Egyptians weren't very comfortable with the practices they were having, so in their exile, migrated and practiced their beliefs. And during this like migration, well, how do we make our belief system more palatable to the layman, and get it to where people do actually buy into this? And it just ends up becoming like a psyop in and of itself, just thousands of years. It's funny when you argue with people who are so convinced that there's like fake news all over the place, everything's a psyop, but magically all that stuff just so happened to start in like the last 50 years when the
Yeah.
CIA was created, and couldn't have possibly taken place in ancient history or anything. And over time, the mistranslations and things like that, like you've said, the victor writes history, not the good guys. It's whoever wins, and usually they win with the most underhanded tactics: lying, subversion, manipulating the truth, pitting people against each other. uh, and It's just always interesting that, you know, the good guys aren't the ones that have marched us to this point in history. It's not just a long line of perfect heroes that have been Puritans. Like you, I promise you, 1,000. You know, you go back 3, 4,000 years ago, all of our ancestors were sacrificing each other and goats and like feeding kids to fires, and this was happening. And people are taking like the Abrahamic interpretation of all these things. And you know, when who was it that was supposed to kill their son?
It was the Egyptians, wasn't the firstborn son? It was the Passover.
Yeah. The whole story where
Oh yeah, that
they
was
told him to like
Abraham.
take Abraham to
Yeah, it
like
was
take his
Jacob,
son
I
up,
believe.
and
Yeah.
Jacob, and like take his son to sacrifice him. That, I mean, that was just child sacrifice in the Bible. God is telling him, he might not have actually told him to, but him not questioning it, I think, is like the conditioning of, oh, you know, sacrificing children is just what you do.
Mm.
um and you know, this just sort of like starts to go back to like Canaan, and you get the Moloch worship and the bull imagery. um and you think of like the bronze bull and the bull and the girl on Wall Street, that it's made of bronze, and the colors of bronze. And it even mentions, I think it's in the Hebrew Bible, King Sargon. And he was just the leader of the Akkadians who were in Mesopotamia and were doing all of this religious occult stuff. They actually warred with the Sumerians over this. I believe it was the Akkadians versus the Kish. And I'm under the belief that the whole War of the Dark and Light Elves thing that is in like Norse mythology and a lot of the belief systems that come out of Scandinavia. Uh, I think that that was that war. Was you had the Sumerians who were traditionally like elementalist pagan gods, so like tree spirits and things like that, and then you
Yeah.
had the Akkadians who were more of the like you know, personified deities, so El, Moloch, Baal. And they got into a war, and Sargon won against the Sumerians, and like dethroned Ugarit, and things like that. And then you have the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Cycle of Baal, and then all that stuff starts getting pushed.
Yeah, yeah,
And
completely
it's
agree.
like he won against the Sumerians, so his narrative gets pushed through, and then that became Mesopotamian culture, which in turn became, you know, the Abrahamic religions, and then Christianity. And that's just my theory. Again, I've only looked at what I would consider as like unbiased eyes, because I'm not trying to disprove religion. I'm not trying to prove it. I'm just showing people what I have seen in texts and things connecting to each other. There's no agenda. People believe what you want. I'm just showing you what I have found about these beliefs.
That's the point. I say at the end of my show is just do your own research, come to your own
Yeah.
conclusions. It's for you to guys to decide. And I completely agree. Rural just means, I'm sorry, pagan just means rural. That's all the actual word means. It means that they believed in the earth. Christians don't like the pagan things because they think they're worshiping God's creation instead of worshiping God itself. So that's why the fallout comes there. And I mean, if you love my child, doesn't mean you don't love me. I just think it's a bit ridiculous. But
Yeah.
I get where the problem is, where they don't like it, but I don't. It's not something I buy into. But and then you look at something people like supposedly Church of England, the Queen, who was a druid. So it's like these things have all been been covered up and mixed, and she was a druid. She was welcomed into a druid bard in 1946, I believe, which is always things are happening in 1946,
Yeah.
year before Israel was founded. But yeah, she was a druid. So we've come to the Christianity. Obviously, it's about 300 AD now, and you're getting this cult basically repackaged
Mm-hmm.
in in Rome. And you
Mm,
can see that we still have this today in City of London, in Paris, in Washington, D.C., that cult hasn't gone away. So it's the old Babylonian cult that David has been talking about, David Icke, for decades in his
mm.
books in the mid 90s, and many others. But David still talks about this. So how do we get from Rome, this cult there, and people saying Rome fell, but it doesn't seem like it did, because when you really look at the symbology, especially in Washington, D.C., it's right in front of your face.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of it came with this subversion that happened between Diocletian being in power and Constantine. Because Diocletian was very not welcoming of Christians. He actually, with Galerius, his general, issued a persecutory edict that mandated the destroying of churches and their holy scriptures, confiscation of church property, banning Christians from undertaking collective legal action, even arresting like officials of Rome that were Christian believers. But when Diocletian was abdicated from his throne and replaced with Galerius, they ended the persecution in 311 and granted Christians the ability to worship freely in Rome. That's what led to them collectivizing and pushing the Council of Nicaea and the Nicene Creed. And oddly enough, Diocletian and Galerius are all tied up with Constantine as well, because you get Fausta, who comes from Maximian, who was tied to Diocletian right here through the Tetrarchy, which or the Tetrarchy, which is another allusion to the Trinity and things like that. But Maximian was the I believe he was the mentor, and he was like the guy that was on the side of pagans in the whole Christianity thing, uh, as far as the war in Rome is concerned. So, like right around the 320-ish era AD for Rome, they started getting into. You can look at like the third Jewish Roman War or something, because they had been at war with Rome a lot over the past like 150 or so years. Um, and I think what they ended up doing was changing their tactics. And instead of trying to fight them one to one with their own people, this is where you started to get Constantine's push of like, hey, I'm going to start actively fighting with Eastern Rome, and this is that same East versus West. Constantine was the West, and Maxentius was the East. But they ended up fighting where Maxentius fell at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge. This was considered like the turning point for the war. So it was very similar to the way that the Spartans had to use that narrow pass to hold off the Persians. The Milvian Bridge was considered like the strong point for the east of Rome. It's where like the Praetorian Guard, which was in charge of, they were basically the secret service for the Roman Emperor, but they were the last like stand here at the Battle of Milvian Bridge. Well, when they fell, even according to Eusebius, the battle was marked marked the beginning of Constantine's conversion to Christianity. Eusebius of Caesarea recounts that Constantine and his soldiers had a vision sent by the Christian God, which up until that point was like blasphemy.
Yeah,
And
didn't he worship Sol Invictus?
mm-hmm,
Yeah, which is
yep,
yeah. Again, when you look at the pictures of Sol Invictus, looks scaringly like the Statue of Liberty, which is Isis to me. But
yeah,
that gets a bit cross-dressy, hermaphrodite there. But yeah, it was Sol Invictus he was worshiping.
yeah. And through what I believe was like his parents. So there's like a lot of mystery behind why like Flavius Constantinus and Helena actually got together and got married. But Helena was essentially like his concubine, I suppose, according to Jerome. But they were full married. They had children and everything. Um, so Constantine was originally married to this Fausta lady who was tied to Maximian. They get into the war. She has Fausta put to death, or he has Fausta. He has his first wife put to his pagan wife put to death, and their firstborn son. But it even
Wow.
says like was the daughter of Emperor Maximian. Uh, to seal the alliance between them for the control of the Tetrarchy, Maximian married her to Constantine in 307. Constantine first tried to present Maximian's suicide as an unfortunate tragedy, but later started spreading another version where Faustia was involved in her father's downfall. And then in 326, she was put to death following the execution of their firstborn son. And he started getting wrapped up in all of the Eusebius, getting married to it wasn't Helena directly. It was it was. Uh, but it is unknown where Helena first met Constantinus. But while serving under Emperor Aurelian, he could have met her in Zenobia, which I have to look into where that is specifically. But Timothy Barnes is a historian. He calls attention to an epitaph at Nicomedia, which is where one of the Eusebius people is from. One of Aurelian's protectors, which could indicate the emperor's presence with the Bithynian region soon after 270. And it goes down to say that some of them assert that Constantius and Helena were joined in a common law marriage, but not recognized by law. So it's almost like there was this secret, not officiated, not ever like publicly recorded relationship between Flavius Constantinus, which was Constantine the Great's dad, and his mom, and like an ousting and like getting rid of the pagan religion after the Tetrarchy was basically secured by the Abrahamic belief system. And you have like where Helena was converted to Christianity by Constantine, and she was sent on a trip to Palestine. And this Eusebius of Caesarea comes in, who records the details of her pilgrimage and other Eastern provinces. And then she ends up converting. Apparently, she's the one. This is Saint Helen. This Helena right here is the Saint Helen that found like all of the like the cross. What is it? The true cross, and all these other like ancient Christian relics or whatever that are now housed in Rome all came from her going out to Palestine in that area.
So she apparently found these things, just having a little wander over there, little just a holiday, a busman's
Yeah.
holiday, and I've gone over there and I've only gone and found Jesus's cross. Like it's
Yeah.
just oh come on. And so but then they're keeping these in museums, I believe, at the
Yeah.
moment. So do you remember when the Iraq war, the war of where there was no there was no hidden
Declaration.
yeah, there was yeah, no, none of that. You don't need that. That's just a show. They went over there and they looted all the museums. I wonder what they were
Mm-hmm.
looking for them because I think they were looking for some of this stuff, this messianic stuff. I actually think they were looking for portals and all sorts of weird stuff. If you look into what they were actually believing, whether they found like I don't say I believe in this stuff. I think they believe in this stuff. But yeah, she went over there and she found apparently a piece of the cross that Jesus apparently was hung on. I mean, what's the chances? I found a tenner down
Yeah.
the back of the sofa once and I was chuffed. But that'd be a find, wouldn't it?
Yeah. What are the odds that the newly converted to Christianity wife of the emperor would just so happen to find relics that reassert their desire to convert all of Rome?
And this is where the kind of like the emperor's new clothes come in because you know that
Mhm.
people at the time would have been going, that sounds like bullshit, but I might get my head cut off, so just clap.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. It's
Yeah.
cognitive
Like
dissonance then.
that's how you got like Christianity spread to like the Nords and stuff. You know, you go back and you look at like the Goths and a lot of the Nords, and they were introduced to Christianity through the Silk Road trade and things like that. They didn't believe any of this shit, but they were like, all right, well, if you believe it and I tell you that I believe it, you'll trade with me and not kill me. So that's what they did. And that's where you get like Jesus was later introduced as like a pantheon alongside Odin, and this like whole crazy incestuous thing where it's all just characters from a belief system that is another version of this belief system. You start getting cameos places, and it's like, come on, man, this is like the Marvel universe at this point.
Well, this is the funny thing. So what you've just explained there is what I was talking about in I think part one when I mentioned it of the compliance score. So the social credit score is your compliance score. So back then was
Yep.
the compliance score. If they went along with something they didn't really believe but pretended to anyway, they'd be left alone. They'd get on with it. It's the same fucking nonsense. And
Yeah.
the same solution to it is to go, that's bollocks. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And it's the same now. And
Yeah.
it's always be the same. So the solution, when people go, oh, you black pill us, come up with solutions. The solution is to accept information when it's actually quite clearly true and refuse to go along with things that are stupid on a mass scale. Then they can't do
Exactly.
anything. There's only a few thousand of them. So the solution is yours to do because it's your responsibility to not play your part in your own downfall. But that's not what they want. They want, no, just fix it. Just fix it. I mean, it's like, I can't do it on my own.
and
We
and
can't do, yeah, you need to do your bit too.
that's always what bothers me is you know I'm not a politician, right? I wasn't. That's not something I'm passionate about. I don't want to be in Congress or in some like seat of power. I'm obsessed with the truth, and solutions are not the truth. The solutions are subjective. They're messy. They require more than one person.
Yep.
Like I don't remember any governing body in existence that's ever been one guy. And it's like, what you want me to pull out the playbook for all of Earth and how every human gets along? You want me to be God
Yeah,
so that you can get rid of your current God.
absolutely.
You want to replace him with someone that has it all figured out and can accomplish all these things. Because you're so programmed to need that it forces you to shudder at the thought of self-reliance, even in the slightest degree.
Yeah, I completely agree. So we've got up to Rome there, and Gaz puts it in a different way, but it's far more graphic, which you can find on WhatsApp to do with a pizza and some male, what could I say, liquid. But it's a good analogy anyway. But how do we go from Rome and there? People saying it fell. I disagree. I think it just changed its labeling and went underground. What is your take on where it is today? Because I believe what we're looking at is the Freemasons and Knights Templar, even all of these OTO cults and even the Chabad lot, and definitely the Freemasons in Washington, D.C., at the highest level, Jesuits, all of these guys are really what you're talking about. It's the same cult, Babylonian cult, but they've just rebadged and kind of spread the company out. But
Oh
what is
yeah.
your take on what happened there?
So I think that a lot of like what happened in Egypt, right, is you saw, okay, well, we're getting kicked out. Let's bastardize a lot of their beliefs, adopt them as our own, and then go back and reintroduce this new thing that is part ours, part something new. And that ended up making it like more digestible there, and that's how you got like the rise of Islam in Egypt. I think the exact same thing not only happened during Rome, but Rome has become that for America, in the sense that while they're taking all of the, it's like they're cherry picking all of the positive things that worked with like the Roman belief system and the symbology and the things that did keep people in control, and they're doing away with all of the less impactful identity things. So like destroying the temples and the false idolatry thing, and like getting rid of the belief of Zeus. It is this other thing, and just sort of morphing it into something that makes it more palatable. You see the same thing going on with politics today, where you saw this alt-right movement now morphing in with like the GOP to make it where you have the old guard and the new guard are fused together. And I kind of see where what I would say is the fall of Rome is like the end of their strictly pagan like pantheon of gods and Zeus and Roman culture and things like that built these massive wonders. And we're a giant superpower in ended up dwindling, splintering, and things, and very well could be a narrative that was crafted to get them to infiltrate worldwide, because if you keep them all in Rome, you
Mhm.
can't influence the rest of the world. So I'd love to actually hear your theory about them going underground and stuff, because I'm all ears.
No, I believe that they did. I believe that they do spread these things out with different kind of religions and different philosophies and belief systems into the secret societies, which were the mystical schools of the old days of the Mayans, basically, which could have come from Atlantis if you believe it was ever true, but came from people that would represent that anyway. So these secret societies, they took that information. That information was always underground in terms of being for the very elite top priest class, but that went into the secret societies then and through the Illuminati and the Bavarian Illuminati, and now it's clearly out there still to display. But they, as you said earlier, they kept their imagery there. They kept their signals to each other. And it's only really in the last 50, 60 years, maybe a little bit longer, that people have started to figure this stuff out. And now it's so blatant that they're going into the transhumanist level and running for it now. But I do believe that this Babylonian cult is clearly what you see, especially in Washington, D.C., Rome,
Mm-hmm.
Maryland. Seven Hills of Saturn are the seven hills of Washington, D.C. It's quite clear exactly what they are. You've got Capitoline Hill, which is capital hill, obviously. So and in the city of London, which is a square mile. So they're all
Mm-hmm.
sovereign states. The Vatican, obviously, another sovereign state, the smallest country in the world. And they wash all their money through Basel, Switzerland, which is the Tower of Babel.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same
Yep.
thing. So the cult is clearly still there. What they've done is, I think you're right. What you said is, they have kind of spread out the company. If you see it as a corporation, a dead entity, they've spread out into these three. You've got the military in Washington, D.C., you've got the religion-ish, or the satanic Babylonian cult religion in the Vatican. And then you've got the money kind of finances done in the City of London. And then it's all washed in Basel, Switzerland, offshore accounts. That's the company. That's a corporation. But that,
It's
I believe, is the corporation of Babylon. The same
yeah,
thing.
it is ironic that it would be a tetrarchy too,
Yeah.
which is the three ruling principles of Rome, the Holy Trinity. It's like it feels like you're a broken record, but you're just saying the thousand different things that are all the same thing that they have pushed, and trying to get it to people. And I almost wonder if that sort of adds to the this guy's crazy, because he just keeps talking about the same thing over and over. And it's like, no, I'm showing you that all of these things that are different to you are just the same thing.
Yeah, they're exactly the
um
same thing, and all the symbology and all these mythical gods and all the numerology and all this stuff goes back to the mystery schools. That's been This information isn't evil in itself. This was
right.
information that helped people for a long time. It's been absolutely utilized against us. It's our birthright is to know this stuff, and they've
Yeah.
taken it. And in every town, you have a Freemasonic lodge. I just went to the gym today, which is clearly a Freemasonic bloody lodge. Well, I wouldn't say a lodge, but it's clearly run by the Freemasons.
Mhm.
Um, I don't really care. I'll just say that to them. But it wasn't even until the early 2000s that they would admit that they were actually still existed. And people forget
That's
that. I used to
yeah.
walk past the Freemasonic Lodge in Norwich, a place where I used to go to work. I walked past the lodge every day, and people will still say, no, they don't exist. It's just a conspiracy theory. Now
Hmm.
everybody accepts they exist. So what are they telling you now that doesn't exist? They're going to accept that it does exist in 20 years' time, and they're just going to come and tell you. But now, no, they're philanthropists that come out and they help the community. The bottom levels do. The top
Yeah.
levels absolutely don't. So the cult is still there in the secret societies, and the secret societies today are the ones controlling the technocrats, the ones controlling the governments, or the technocrats, the governments. And I believe that it goes back to these black nobility bloodlines, which they trace their lineage back to these Abrahamic religion tribes, which trace their roots back to this Babylonian cult, which you've
Yep.
just explained there. Um, but it's still there. It's just hidden. It's just rebranded in a way. But I get you. Do you think that they're having to speed up now because they're outwardly talking about the Golden Dawn, Trump, New World Order, Ordo Seclorum, Ordo Novus
Yeah.
Seclorum. They're having to do it out in the open now. There's a speeding up, almost like a panic now. I see really happening.
Yeah. I think honestly that COVID might have been a large hey, let's test compliance. So with COVID, you had the populist candidate that was supposed to be the outsider coming in and basically working the globalist agenda.
Mm.
With COVID, the left and progressives obviously tend to lean more towards the science and things like that. So if you get scientists saying something and a populist candidate that all of these conspiracy truther peoples backed in 2016, and you get him to pass this, well, then let's see how people react. His followers did nothing. They still love him. They don't care that he tapped a Soros guy to print off $6 to $8 trillion on our money. He doesn't. They don't care that he created Operation Warp Speed. You bring that stuff up, and he's like, "Yeah, COVID's a scam, and it killed a bunch of people, and there's like vax injured people, and I would sue them if I could because I lost my job." Who was the guy that made all of that possible? And it's
Yeah, but they come out with, oh, but he was tricked by Fauci. Oh, and you want him in again then? Is he that? Because he's that
yeah,
stupid. He wasn't tricked by Fauci. Fauci is Jesuit educated, and so is Donald Trump Jesuit educated, which is the Secret Service of the Vatican, and so is Melinda Gates as well.
yeah,
So clearly you can point all this stuff out, but it's the fallacy of there. You want a bloke that's stupid enough to be tricked by a Jesuit in the background again. Like, I bet.
exactly. Yeah, and it's funny because I had just mentioned this about you aware of Tim Pool?
Yes. Oh, yeah. The beanie hat boy, teeny weeny
It,
beanie man.
yeah, how it came out that he was like definitely getting money from Russia, and his whole thing was, well, I didn't know. Well, okay, so either you're lying or you're an idiot, and there is no difference. And it's like I wouldn't trust somebody that's either lying or an idiot in office. So why are
Yeah,
we voting this guy back in if he got duped by Fauci, even though he gave him a medal in his last day in office when COVID was way over?
he did, and he didn't pardon Julian Assange, but pardoned Jared Kushner's dad, who
Ross
was
Ulbricht.
yeah. Also, this has actually come to this. So modern day, the transhumanist part. So we'll maybe bring it up to the modern day now. He pardoned a guy called Anthony Lewandowski on the last day in office. Now, Anthony Lewandowski was pardoned on the behest of Peter Thiel. Anthony Lewandowski, and I know you know this, but I'm just saying it for the audience, created a cult called the Way of the Future. The Way of the Future, the main aim of that cult was to create an AI godhead. Godhead is the term the Kabbalists, Sabbatians, Chabad use to put in, I would say, into their Solomon's temple. He pardoned him after an 18-month, halfway through an 18-month sentence, and then in 2023, Lewandowski started up his cult again. I don't know about you, but what could a messianic cult do with an AI godhead? I don't know.
Well, really, it's only as much power as we let them have. I would say so. That's like offering up, information about yourself on the internet that can be scraped and used against you. Obviously, uh, I operate above the board, but if I, ever did want to dabble in something that's a little less, graceful, at this point, if I don't do it over carrier pigeon, it's going to be seen by somebody. like,
Yeah.
um, and I think that Elon is the Trojan horse that is him and Vivek Ramaswamy with this Doge Department of Government Efficiency. We're already seeing it with Javier Milei in Argentina, where he is cut 90% of his government, and he's arguing about bringing in AI and like using things to subsidize the lack of people. And it's like, well, that you're basically inviting AI to become the government.
Yeah,
And
he's
Trump
even
or
put
Elon
out.
was cool with it.
Yeah, well, Malay is a Herbadnik. He's there crying at the
Mm.
Wailing Wall, which was an old Roman fort, but don't tell him. And he brought out a system that basically is future crime. So look back in your past and to see whether you're likelihood are likely of committing certain crimes that they'll make up in the future. So it's
Yeah.
not quite pre-crime, but it is very similar. So he's bought that system in Argentina already. So you're completely right. He's jumping right on board with this technocratic stuff with all of these guys, and this messianic cult are in with these technocrats, massively.
Yeah, and I can't remember if it was Elon or Trump at this point because their posts tend to just run together for me at this point. But one of them had said like they really liked the work that Javier was doing, and either way you go, that's somebody that's going to be an executive position of decision making in our government in what, like 2 months.
So what is this Dodge thing? Is it called Dodge? What is this
Doge.
Doge bags?
Um,
What is it? What is
yeah.
it?
So a couple of years ago, Elon was, super into crypto, realizing that you could siphon limitless amounts of money from private investors as long as you made it, not fiat currency. But he used to pump this coin called Dogecoin, which was like some depiction of like a Shiba Inu thing. And it came off of a meme from like 2012. If you look up like Doge meme 2012, it's got like Comic Sans and stuff, and it originated from 4chan. And Elon has always historically sided with the that side of like terminally online people. But he invested a lot of money into Dogecoin and would tweet about it all the time, make the price skyrocket. He even got looked at by like the SEC and stuff for investigations into that. Well, when Javier started slashing government jobs and things like that. I believe somebody on Twitter had posted it. Now, this could have been a bot that Elon did, a fake account. Who knows? He owns the platform. He could do whatever he wants. And they said, well, what if, you guys team up with Donald Trump, and as an allusion to like the Dogecoin stuff from a couple years ago, said, what if we created a government department called Doge and call it Department of Government Efficiency? And he just kind of like took it, ran with it. And now literally we have a meme coin that was started by 4chaners as an official department of our government.
These people are so like idiotic. It's unbelievable. So this has just come out today. Elon Musk just quietly confirmed a huge Bitcoin and crypto price game changer. Bitcoin has surged back towards the psychological, I think it's psychological, $10,000 per Bitcoin milestone after swings following a series of earth-shattering leaks. Basically, he's pushing it. He's called the Kingmaker, basically, David Icke calls him. The Bitcoin price has rocketed higher since the election of Republican Donald Trump, whose administration is predicting to trigger a Bitcoin price tipping point. Well, of course it is. Now, as Tesla billionaire Elon Musk issues a super fast US bankruptcy warning, the ex owner has quietly confirmed a Bitcoin and crypto market game changer. This is no different from when in the was it the one of the wars, and I never remember getting these right. I'm terrible with wars and stuff. Where one of the, I think it was, who was it, announced that we'd already won the war, lost the war, and everybody sold their stock, and then it turns out we were winning it, and then it was the Rockefellers bought all the stock up and then sold it back.
Yeah.
This is just the same play. It's like, in it, it's like, oh, it's all going to crash. It's all going to crash. They're controlling all monetary systems. They don't have any gold. They just print more. Like it's all a game. These people
It,
are children, but people just don't want to call them out on it.
yeah, it's crazy because when you look at all the people that are in support of Bitcoin, I would say that 95% of them overlap with the abolish the Fed
Mm,
group. And it's funny because like the criticisms that they have about the Federal Reserve, it's backed by nothing. It's numbers on a screen. You
mm.
don't know, we're not in control of it. It's centralized. Well, I mean, all those same arguments can be made about Bitcoin. BlackRock is the number one holder of Bitcoin. You have all of these. Amazon owns Bitcoin, Apple, all these companies that have so much money also have money in Bitcoin. So a couple people will, obviously make a lot of money to them on an individual level. And I kind of mentioned this with Kristen the last time you guys had me here to Iconic, but it's like Bitcoin is fiat currency without any physical manifestation or accountability. Because when you crash a dollar, the government is accountable for that, and the people that are in it. Now, whether the people do something about it is another discussion. But Bitcoin, it's some random guy named Satoshi Nakamoto that lives in Japan, even though there's ties to the CIA. It's like who do we hold responsible when if Bitcoin crashes? Nobody. And that's the way that they want it. It's centralized, digital, nothing to back it, highly volatile and manipulative. And the largest interests that have run the central banking system also run Bitcoin.
Yeah,
So it
it's
just
insane. No, it's insane. I had Tony Artsburn on the last week, and he was talking about. I mean, he is pro Bitcoin, but he does talk about the necessity to keep gold. And then we even have like a chat about that and what it really actually means, because it all seems to be a mind construct to me. I can't quite because don't feel like there's anything tangible. Even we can't eat gold. I'm
right.
sure I'll try, but I mean, I'll just take my molars out.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't seem to have any tangible assets. And what I was saying with the Bitcoin thing is it's all very well having it on there, but we saw with the truckers in Canada that they just froze the accounts. So how do
Mm-hmm.
you off ramp this
That
fantasy currency? Like, if you're not allowed on the internet, and then if you're banned from the internet because your compliance score is too low, who's going to lend you money? And I know you can get it offline, but who's going to be seen to even look at it when there's technology everywhere that sees everything you're doing? Remember Juliet Bryant with a disk? And this was 20 years ago, through of every email she ever sent. 20
yep.
years ago. Are you going to be seen to be trading with me if I'm locked out, knowing that you'll probably get locked out too? Probably
Nope.
not. Exactly.
Especially when like the whole ledger, like that's one of the biggest selling points of Bitcoin is, oh well, you can tie every transaction back to somebody. And I'm like, if I'm loaning somebody $5 in cash, the government doesn't have to know about this. If I do it in Bitcoin, them and everyone is going to know it was me. It's public, it's accessible, and it's permanent. Like you can't get rid of it. And it just adds more credence and another stick to their carrot and stick thing.
Wayne McCroy came out with a really good point. He said, look, it won't happen because they can't run their own organized criminal activities because the system is open. You can't have one or other. So they will be able to track, because not everybody in government's a crook. Not everyone in the
Right.
police is a crook. Not everyone, I mean, very small amount of people are actually this evil. There's a few thousand people at the top. So
Yeah.
there'll be people who are able to pick up on this. So their whole system of crime actually has to function on secrecy. So if we're not got any secrecy, they haven't either. So
Yeah.
it can bite them on the ass. So there was a really good point I think he made is that it's just they're shooting themselves in the foot with their criminal enterprises because of that. Because not
Yeah.
everyone in a place of office is a crook. Most people are good. And I think
Well,
that's our saving grace. Like, let's end it on a nice nice way.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that they I'd say there's maybe going to be 0.1% of the evil right now that just holistically doesn't even need to have a crypto wallet to function. Like they just operate on namesake alone. And that's how they're going to get their upper echelon of people to now also be under control and be in the shit with us.
But there is a point where that kind of filters out from the top, and it
Oh, yeah.
doesn't work. It just doesn't work. The numbers don't add up, literally. Thank you so much for giving me 2 hours of your time. Where can people find your content and your wealth of knowledge?
Yeah, thanks so much, Rich, and thanks for having me. I am Seven Seas everywhere. You can find me on Twitter. X is where I do most of my investigative stuff. If you ever want to break, because I know that inundating with this stuff, I play video games and like try to keep things a little cheery on like my YouTube and stuff. And then I have a podcast with one of my best friends of like 15 plus years called the Deep Web Pod that you can find on Rumble, YouTube, and Twitter as well. Seven Seas for me. Deep Web Pod is our podcast, and Oats Main is my co-host over there. I just forgot to shout him out last time, so I wanted to make sure I put his name out there because he's part of the reason that I started doing all this digging and getting into the esoteric stuff. So thanks again, Rich, for having me. Huge fan of you guys and David Icke's whole crew over there. And let's get the truth out there, man.
There's definitely. I'll have to get the Oaks on here as well. And one thing I did see today is you've got some music out. Did I see that right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So I've been doing music for probably about 10 years now. I didn't start publishing it until a few years ago. Self-made, I do all my own stuff. I write all my own music, but I have a metal album coming out, which I've never done. Metal rock, never saw myself going that genre. But it's all about what's going on. So like there's a song called like Cult of the Master that talks about them trying to push like the woke mind virus, which is actually just the cult mind virus, as I like to call it, because it encompasses Elon and all of his shit. But singles coming out for that album will be out in January. So if you like metal or you hate the elite that try to constantly ruin your life, you might like this. Feel free to go give it a listen.
Perfect. That's fantastic. So, guys, remember to go and check out Seven Seas' work and remember to do your own research, come to your own conclusions, and we'll see you in a week's time. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.